3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Dave the Dog Trainer podcast, episode 186.
Hello, hello.
We got a lake effect whiteout outside.
It's lovely.
Snowing like crazy. It's been snowing all damn morning. We probably got probably 4 or 5 inches of snow already in the last 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's whiteout. It's beautiful. It looks like a snow globe. Everybody likes it. But I just realized I got something to do in an hour and a half. So we're going to do a nice quick podcast episode for you guys. Happy 2025, everybody.
Hello,
we are
hello.
now 3 days into the new year. Very
Crazy.
exciting.
I can't
Very
believe it's
exciting.
here already. I'm so excited.
How was 2024?
It was great. You know, it was, I don't know. I just had a really smooth year, I feel like. Just trying to figure out how I can make 25 better right now.
Ain't that always the game?
It is. How about you? How was
good.
your 24?
It was good. I feel like we kind of recapped, at the end of the last episode.
Yeah.
You prodded me on a couple of good questions,
Mm-hmm.
and that was cool. That was cool.
Yeah.
So it was good. So yeah, 2025. I mean, first, this first month, we're just kind of reevaluating. Right?
Yeah.
Looking at things from the outside in, seeing what we can adjust, what we can make better, and can't complain. So
Good.
okay, there's gonna be 2 topics today we're gonna talk about.
Okay.
One is a really long question we got on TikTok from somebody. That is going to be the bulk of the episode. The other is just a random post that I saw online that I wanted to talk about.
Ooh, I like that.
Let's start about the random post online because this shouldn't be a ridiculously long one. Okay.
Okay.
So Black Kraken Canine, I'm not very familiar with them, but I think they're a pretty reputable training company. I think they generally do pretty good work from my understanding of them. I've never seen anything that I've been like, oh my God, I don't like this or anything like that.
Yeah.
But they posted something that I don't agree with nor disagree with fully that I want to I thought would make a good talking point.
Okay.
So a couple of people sharing this around. It says, a dog growling at kids near its food isn't a dog problem. It's a parenting problem.
Ooh, that could be a hot take.
Hot take. What's your take, Josh? Give us your opinion on that. A dog growling at kids near its food isn't a dog problem. It's a parenting problem.
I'm going to have to side with it as a parenting problem.
Elaborate.
I mean, if you know that your dog has issues with food, or in general, you probably shouldn't have your kids around your dog while it's trying to eat its meal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably on you to keep that separated during that time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
No, okay.
Yeah.
The reason, anytime I'm reading through Facebook and I see something come by and I look at it like that and I stop for a minute and I think about it and I'm like, wait a minute, what do I think about this situation? That's when I know I want to use it as a good talking point. Because this one I felt the same way. I was looking at it and at first I'm like, yeah, but no, but yeah.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah.
Because here's the thing, right? We need to know the context of the situation of the dog growling at the kid over the food, right?
Okay.
I want to challenge some blanket statements that we make sometimes, including ones I'm sure that I make myself, because most of these conversations are so much more nuanced than we make it seem. And I think a area where I want to kind of get out of as far as how I coach people and stuff is making too many of those blanket statements, because they could create a false perception of a very complex thing, which is dog training. We talk about dog training as an art and dog training as something that really there's not a one-size-fits-all approach for different things. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we don't get into the weeds enough with those conversations. So let's look at this, right? A dog growling at a kid around their food. Well, what is the kid doing? Right? Are we in a situation where the kid is actively messing with the dog while the dog is eating? If that's the case, yeah, for sure. That's a parenting problem. Don't let your kid go and, jump on top of your dog while they're eating or be messing with them while they're eating. Or if the dog is eating right here and the kid is running around screaming, doing freaking NASCAR laps around the dog while they're eating, every day when the dog is eating, then of course that would be a scenario where we would say that's a parenting problem where the kid is putting the dog into a state of like, oh my God, there's this shit happening around me every time I try to eat. I can never just enjoy myself. I'm always on guard because I never know when this kid is going to come up and bombard me with attention, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm assuming with.
Yeah, sure. So under that context, like, yes, I completely agree. So if we want to make a blanket statement with it, we would say that, okay, well, a dog growling at kids, messing with them while they're eating isn't a dog problem. It's a parenting problem. Like, I could get down with that blanket statement, right?
Yeah.
But let's add some nuance to that as well, right? Let's say, I've had parents come up to me before and they have a dog that they're either nervous of the dog developing resource guarding, or the dog has a little bit of resource guarding, and they give me the statement of like, well, I can't, and I tell them the same thing, like, well, your kid shouldn't mess with your dog while they're eating or while they're chewing on bones or things like that, right? And they'll say, there's two types of people that say this, right? You have your kind of parents that are looking for an excuse that say, well, like, I can't control my, I can't stop it from happening forever, right?
Yeah.
Or, whatever, which is basically like an excuse for like, well, I don't want to discipline my kid for doing this. So like, it's gonna happen, right? So the dog needs to get used to it kind of thing, which to those, that's still a parenting problem. Or you have the like logical parents that say things like, okay, well, I will do my best to ensure this never happens, right? But there may come a time where something slips, my management fails, because that still is a technique of management, obviously, and the kid accidentally runs up to the dog, right?
Yeah.
And let's say that only happens once every freaking year and a half, where the kid accidentally goes over and touches the dog while they're eating, and the dog still growls at them in those circumstances. That's where you start teetering into the fine line of, is that a parenting problem? Like, can you actually avoid things forever? I don't know. Like, sure, you could put in place better layers of management and feed the dog in the crate all the time, and then lock the dog in the room while the dog is in the crate when, they're eating, and all those types of things. And you could do that. But at a certain point, if you want to have a family dog, right, meaning a dog that is going to coexist well, not just with you, not with just you and your husband, not with just you and your husband and your kids, but your extended family, you know what I mean? Like a good family dog, which is what people want. Is that a parenting problem, or is that a dog problem of this is not the right dog for a family dog household, right? This is where you get into the nuance of it, right? Because there are circumstances, a dog growling at a kid who touches them accidentally one time per year and a half, right? When the dog is eating, isn't a dog problem, it's a parenting problem. I would not agree with that statement then at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's nuance to this conversation, and I think that when we look, the reason why I want to use this as a conversation talking point, and this will tie into the next thing that I got, is because we could look at something like this, and when we have clients that call us and say, my dog is having resource guarding issues, it's growling at our kids, there are so many trainers that don't look at the nuance and get too stuck on the blanket statements that immediately, right off the rip on the phone, will shut it down and say, no, you're being a bad parent, which is why this issue is happening. Right? It's similar to the conversation we had on the last podcast when we talked about the phone consult we have with clients, and the client that had a dog with a neck injury that needed to use a harness, and how so many trainers shot her down and said, no, I'm not going to work with you because we don't use harnesses, as opposed to looking at the nuance of the situation.
For sure.
You've got to be able to empathetically look at the situation and the nuance of these types of things before you make these blanket statements and judgments.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
I do get that.
Right? Now let's look at it from a further standpoint, because up until this point, we just looked at this from the standpoint of kids that are actually messing with the dog when they're eating and the nuance to that.
Yeah.
Then you have the other side of things of a dog growling at kids. Let's take this literally, right? A dog growling at kids near its food isn't a dog problem. It's a parenting problem. So you're telling me that it's an acceptable behavior for a dog to growl at your child who's just standing in the same room as your dog that's eating?
No.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's another layer to this conversation. Like, Sure, we could have the nuance of if the dog is running and screaming and throwing toys and stuff near the dog, that would be a problem. But there are many dogs that you being in the room with them, they will start resource guarding the food. You walk the wrong way in the presence of them, they will start growling at you over their food. And you're going to tell me that's a parenting problem then at that point?
Right.
That most certainly is a dog problem.
Yeah.
Most certainly is a dog problem at that point, right?
Yeah.
But there's further nuance to it. There's further nuance to it because, okay, let's say your kid messes with your dog all the time when they're eating, right? So they're doing the thing that we said is a parenting problem then at that point. And then because the dog is so programmed to when the kid is near the dog, they're likely going to mess with them. Just the presence of the child near the dog while they're eating causes the dog to proactively growl and defend themselves. Because they're anticipating what the kid may do, right? Yep. That would be a parenting problem.
Very much so.
So though I just said a minute ago that would be a dog problem under most circumstances, that would be the caveat and the nuance to where it would become a parenting problem at that point. So again, we're really, really overanalyzing this right now. But the point is, as you're assessing behavioral modification plans you need to take, you cannot rely on blanket statements like this, because as you rely on blanket statements like this, it forces you to get out of the state of mind of looking at all those details that are necessary details you need to know in order to assess where the problem lies. Because once you assess where the problem lies, you can come up with a solution. If we know that this is a parenting issue, all of those details ironed out where the dog is growling at the kid because of this, and this, we could alleviate those problems and put our attention onto solving that problem. But if it's not, then we have to look at the dog and say, this is a dog problem. We need to establish training routines with the dog in order to work through those types of things.
Yeah. I could see where, as a blanket statement, it could be right and wrong
100%.
at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I said, I don't disagree with it or agree with it. I'm just using this as not like why did this company post this? Obviously, I'm sure, this company is a reputable enough company to be able to look at the nuance of certain situations. Yeah. But just as a talking point, right? There are plenty of trainers out there that will look at a statement like this and just wholeheartedly agree 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? And be like, it is that all the time. And anytime a client calls and says, hey, my dog's growling at my kid when they're eating, their immediate response goes to, why is the kid near the dog while they're eating?
Right.
I see people, I saw, this was years ago. I remember a very reputable sport dog trainer, not one that anybody that's listening to this would think of, but a very reputable sport dog trainer made a post about dogs with he's like, my dogs don't have resource guarding issues. You know how I stop them from having resource guarding issues? And it was a real tongue-in-cheek, statement of he's like, look, and then he took a food bowl, he put it into a crate, and he put the dog in the crate and closed the door. He said, just feed your dog in the fucking crate or something like that, right?
Okay.
And again, same deal. There's plenty of nuance to that. We're not going to break it down in as crazy of detail as this, but there are plenty of dogs where if you just leave them alone and feed them in their crate in a nice quiet place, you'll never run into resource guarding issues. It will never be created.
Yeah.
But if you have a dog that actually has resource guarding issues, holy shit, can that compound on the problem?
Right.
You put a resource guarding dog into an enclosed space.
Yeah.
That makes them about 100 times more likely to display the resource guarding issues than at that point.
That's what I was thinking, man.
Right? So it's damn, it's that's why I don't necessarily like statements like that all the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it could be different in any situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, if it's every once in a while when the kid's just in the vicinity and the dog growls for no reason, I mean, that's a dog problem.
Yeah,
100%.
Nuance all of it. I mean, I have so many clients that working with families. When you really look at a young family that has young children and dogs, right? Yeah. Though we want to say we could manage everything forever and ensure the kid never does anything annoying to the dog, you have to, if you have a family and you have children, have a dog that can tolerate a little bit of unpredictability.
Yeah.
You just have to.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts around that, because you could manage things sometimes, but you could not manage things forever.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you a quick story about when I was a kid? We had 2 Rottweilers outside, and it was Hans and Heidi.
Hans and Heidi.
Yeah, that was the Rottweilers. Those dogs loved me. I was like 5 or 6 at the time. And one day, I just found a branch on the ground with some leaves on it. And I started chasing Heidi with it. And Heidi did not like it.
Yeah.
But I kept chasing her. I chased her to the back porch, put her in a corner, and she just went gonk like that. Didn't bite hard, but just went thunk.
Yeah.
But never had a problem. Never had a problem after that. But it was just that one time that I was just being a kid, There's no predictability with a child or a dog. So it's like, shit can
Josh,
happen
why are you
anyway.
chasing dogs around with fucking sticks?
Dude, I was 5, okay? 5 in the middle of nowhere. I had to have an imagination. I don't know.
That's an interesting story. So let's look at that scenario, Josh.
Yeah.
Let's try to find the nuance in that scenario. Because let's say you're a client. Let's say your mother called me and said, oh my gosh, this scenario just happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Just chunked on my...
Is that scenario a dog problem or a parenting problem?
That was a parenting problem, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at just the face value of that, of like, why is my 5-year-old left alone for a long enough period of time where not only can my child grab this stick, but proceed to chase a dog around, and not chase a dog around and immediately get bit, but chase a dog around until the dog got cornered and literally could not get away and needed to bite.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that is for sure a parenting problem
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh's mom.
No. Yeah, sorry, Mom.
Because it'd be a different story if, like, let's say you picked up a stick, right? And as soon as you even started walking near the dog, their default response was just bite to make you go away, right? Then I would have to look at, okay, that seems like a dog problem, but let's look at the history of, does Josh antagonize dogs as a little shit 5-year-old all the time? Right? Yeah. Has Josh done this a gazillion times before, and the dog realized over those gazillion times it had no escape, so it needed to proactively defend itself in that situation? At that point, parenting problem, yeah. Right? But if not, if that's the first time that circumstance has ever happened, little asshole 5-year-old Josh has never done anything annoying to the dogs before, but just suddenly picked up the stick and got an immediate bite for picking up the stick and walking towards the dog, that's a dog problem. And at that point, you got to look at, is that rehabilitatable? How bad was the bite?
Yeah.
Right? Like, because then you look at, like, okay, once we determine it's a dog problem or a parenting problem, right? If we determine it's a dog problem, then you got to start looking at what's the severity of the risk of the dog problem.
Right.
Right? Because you get into, like, you're doing everything for the most part right, but random unpredictable situations that are inevitably going to happen in life result in your 5-year-old getting bit in the face. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That's like, that's a pretty not okay situation to be in.
Yeah.
And that might mean that that's not a good fit for that dog in your home.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah. I will say the one thing I do remember is, I started crying immediately. I was like, ah! And my mom was like, what happened? I was like, I was chasing Heidi with a stick. And
you fucking idiot.
Yeah. She was like, why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Because I'm 5. Yeah, I don't know. So I learned my lesson, and Heidi and I were perfect after that.
Great. So, parenting problem. Your mom taught you a lesson. Heidi taught you a lesson.
Yeah, Heidi taught me
Because listen, if I were 5 and got bit in the face by a Rottweiler, no matter how serious it is, I'm probably not going to mess with that Rottweiler anymore. After that.
Sure didn't.
Man, that segues into, like, God, I've had, speaking about, like, kids and dogs and stuff like that. Man, now, granted, I don't work with the bulk of clients that I used to, like we talked about this last podcast episode, like Michelle, Bridget, Senny, like they're working with 90% of the dogs that come in, 95% of the dogs that come in. So I personally don't have to encounter this much myself, but I'll encounter it over the phone when I'm talking to people. Man, when you have no matter if it's a dog problem or if it's a kid or if it's a parenting problem, when you have dogs that are hurting children, right? Or like seriously traumatizing kids by like scaring them.
Yeah.
And you have parents that are like still trying to like, I need like, you know, past just like, you know, hey, you know, like your dog's hurting your child.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're like, oh, but like, I still want to try to work through it. It's like, I get it, but like, your dog is hurting your child.
Yeah.
And some parents just don't get that, man. That's getting wild. Back to like Michelle's viral clip we talked about like a gazillion podcast episodes again, where she said, you know, like if you pick a dog over a person, particularly a dog over a child, particularly a dog over your child, when there are safety risks involved, what are you doing?
You're a little cuckoo.
What are you doing, man?
Yeah, that's not good.
Man, like that's crazy. Like I've worked with parents before that prior to getting very strict about, no, I will not work with you in these circumstances. Like I'm talking like my first year or two training dogs, right? I would work with parents and like I would see kids come in that were like terrified of their dog. You know, like and imagine your kid living in a house where they're terrified of the animal walking around the house and you not looking and being like, my sole duty is to protect my child.
Right.
And I'm not doing, you know what I mean?
That. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how you even get to that mindset.
I don't know, man.
Because it's like...
I think it stems from this like concept that dogs are just this absolute figure of innocence. And like, you know, look at the crazy comments we get on social media sometimes where people talk about like anytime they see an aggressive dog, they're like, well, the dog's only that way because somebody did something to it. You know, and like sometimes we convince ourselves that. And I'm sure a lot of parents that are in that situation that won't get rid of that dog have truly convinced themselves that the dog is not doing anything malicious. Or the dog is only doing something that's malicious or violent like that because somebody was so cruel to them at one point that they feel they have no other need than to do that. And you get this like deep sense of empathy for the animal where it's like, oh my God, like, they're like the more extreme the behavior is that you see your dog rehearse, the more empathetic they are to the animal because they're like, oh my God, it's only that extreme because of the extreme severity of the things that have happened to them. And it makes you feel like more sad and like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sure so much of it has to do with that. But like you get so blinded by it. One, it's not reality. Like 99% of the dogs we work with that are very dangerous owners have had since 8 weeks old and have had nothing bad happen to them in their lives, aside from maybe a couple missteps from a training standpoint that aren't even, we can't even justify as like bad things happening to the dog.
Yeah.
Like we could say, oh yeah, well the owner didn't do this, and this, which would have stopped those behavioral issues from happening. But the owner didn't do anything to the dog.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So one, it's just not reality. Two, it's like even if that's the case, even if you rescued this dog that for the 5 years before you got the dog had like all this horrible abusive stuff done to them, like they're still trying to hurt your child.
Yeah.
Right? Like we still have to be more empathetic to that.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I just kicked this thing.
I was like, what the heck was that, man? Yeah, I don't know. It's I think it's a lot of that and a lot of the you know, dogs are our kids. You know, that weird implementation from where dogs used to be kind of the working accessory to it's my other baby.
Yeah.
It's Billy and Rufus, you know? And they're like on the same plane for some people.
Billy and Rufus.
Yeah.
Heidi and Hans.
Yeah. But they're on like people will keep their dogs like on the same plane as their own children.
Oh yeah. No.
I mean, I know we joke around, you know, Bender, like, oh, you should, you know, we tell her grandma like that's your
grandpuppy.
Yeah, grandpuppy or whatever. But like,
yeah, it's still a dog.
Yeah, it's still a dog.
So that's thing number one is nuance. Again, everybody, just I want you to look at this year, 2025, when you're reading things online from dog trainers, myself included, find the nuance in the blanket statements. Find the nuance. It's impossible to portray all the nuance. I understand that, right? Which is why, like I said, like this is no dig at all on the person that posted this, not in the slightest, because like I get what they're saying. And I agree, right?
Yeah.
But be aware of the nuance as you're then evaluating situations that you're working with, or if you're an owner, right? Because again, we have the podcast listeners are owners as well as trainers. If you're a trainer, look at the nuance of the situations as you're evaluating your clients. If you're an owner, when you read things dog trainers post, ask yourself the question of, is there more nuance to this if you're applying it to your situation, and figure out what that nuance is.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. This is a long one here. So I got this message from somebody on TikTok, TikTok. You think TikTok's going to go away? Aren't they trying to ban it?
Yeah, it's supposed to happen on the 19th or something, and I guess they're trying to push it back or something. I don't know. I've
just never really given that much of a fuck about TikTok. I really haven't.
I was going to say, I wouldn't be.
Like, we got a great amount of followers on it. Like, it's our second most followed platform that we have, you know? And, like, we get plenty of engagement and stuff, but I don't know, man. Like, I've only had maybe one or two people ever be like, yeah, I signed up for your training because of TikTok. I've gotten a couple virtual consults through TikTok, but, like, just the people on it just don't seem like real. It doesn't seem like real life. TikTok just feels like fake life to me.
Dude, I will tell you.
Like, the people on it all feel like it's like bots.
It feels like bots or just miserable people.
Yeah.
Sorry to get off topic, but like real quick, the band thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we made a TikTok.
Oh, did you make a TikTok?
And the 99.9% of the hate, all on TikTok.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the amount of boomers that are on TikTok is insane, by the way. I just want to say that. But yeah, it's just a weird landscape.
Yeah, I don't love it.
Netscape, I guess is what you call it.
I don't love it. All right. Okay. So this is a message I got from somebody. It's long. I'm going to read the whole thing, and then we'll kind of give my opinions on it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this person, I'm not going to give out the name on this one. About a year ago, I had commented on one of your posts about a situation we were experiencing with our dogs. We have 2 Danes, intact females, who go into heat within a month of each other. When one's heat was over and the other's about to start, they got in pretty serious fights, landing me in the ER, surgery, and a week in the hospital. We reached out to behaviorists and trainers locally, but did not get much hope on reaching a resolution that we could afford. Even the board and train for both dogs, a month each, didn't sound like they had any real hope in the situation, being one in which it could result in us keeping both dogs. But they did help us understand the best way to break them up when they fight. We separated them after fighting and have not allowed them together since, not intentionally. From January to June, they had 4 fights. They were all severe, ending in us loading them in different cars and rushing in to have ears sewn back together and large pieces of skin on their necks sewn back on.
Aye.
Among all the sutures they needed alongside those more serious injuries. We weren't willing to put either dog down, weren't willing to put one in a shelter or humane society. We contacted all the rescues we could find, and none were willing to take them, or they didn't have availability. I was also looking everywhere I could think of to get the message out that we wanted to rehome one of them. It took from January until August to find someone, and we had to rehome our 5-year-old that we had a strong bond with versus our 1.5-year-old who we had just brought into our home months later after our Brazilian Mastiff had to be put down due to old age. We knew we could guarantee that the older one was good with kids, good with cats, and wasn't aggressive towards human and other dogs at dog parks. Uncertain of in home due to fights, but she didn't get along great with the Mastiff. We kept the younger one because we couldn't find something suitable for her that wasn't risking a bad outcome. We had to provide every possible thing and then some that a dog would need to the new family, as well as paying for half of the cost of food. I thought things were going well as we kept in contact, and anytime they mentioned needing anything for the dog, we would have Amazon deliver something nicer than we even would have got for our home. Last night, we got a call asking us to come get the dog, stating she had been having accidents in their house. However, we had started to suspect neglect and possibly them having got a new puppy that was using the resources we provided for the dog from us. We immediately got to preparing our house to bring the dog back home. Crates in different rooms, own set of everything, toys, bowls, bedroom, dogs, or beds, etc. And we are going to keep them separated at all times and do what we can to keep them from seeing each other at all for the time being. We know we need to get the one who returned checked out by a vet to confirm good health, but from what we have observed since having her home, she doesn't seem to have any issues with accidents. She rings her bells and goes out and uses the bathroom, and somehow seems like her spirit has not been broken after all she's been through. I'm not sure how much luck I will have finding a new home for one of them, and I know the longer they remain in the same house, the longer they are in a constant state of fight or flight, and it changes our personality heavily over time. I'm wondering, not that one has been out of the home for all this time, is it possible for a reintroduction and maybe successfully coexisting? Maybe walks together, with a person walking each one instead of person for both dogs. I realized there would never be a point where they'd ever be able to be alone together. It would take my being very in tune with what they are communicating to one another so I could intervene before anything could get to a fight again. But I guess I'm wondering, in our shoes, what would you do? They are both excellent dogs individually, with the exception of the little things with the younger one, but she is very eager to please and wants to learn. She loves praise more than treats when it comes to rewards. They are great dogs, but from what I understand, they were resource guarding me. That's why I made sure they had separate everything so they knew that it was theirs and that they wouldn't have to feel a need to fight for it. It's a lot of work, but we rotate everything out when one comes out of the crate and do the same for the other when it's turn. Sorry for the long message on New Year's Eve. It's not at all time sensitive to that degree. It's just the first moment free I had to message. Thank you for reading my message, and I look forward to any knowledge or advice you have to help our situation out.
That's a doozy. That's rough. Every bit about that.
Every single damn bit of that one is rough.
Yeah.
And I promise that's not me laughing at you, like, at all. Obviously.
No, that's just
extremely empathetic. It's just like, damn.
Yeah, like
damn.
Anything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Well, let's start from the top here, right? Mm-hmm. You got 2 intact female Great Danes, right? 2 things, right? Or 3 things, right? Large breed dogs that are fighting with each other. That's a thing working against you. Mm-hmm. Both being female, that's a thing working against you.
Yeah.
Both being intact still, that's working against you.
Oh, yeah.
You have clearly an issue with the dogs redirecting when they're fighting, which is how you wound up in the emergency room and had surgery and were in the hospital for a week.
Yeah.
That's another thing working against you.
Big thing.
Now, you said you worked with you tried to reach out to trainers. There are so few trainers out there that actually know how to help people in these situations. And the ones that actually do, know how to help people in these situations, the success rate on it is really skewed, ourselves included, right? We have a lot of fighting dog situations where it worked out fine, and we have a lot of fighting dog situations we worked with over the years where it just didn't work out, and they had to get rid of a dog.
Yeah.
Right? That's just the way that it works.
Yeah.
And getting back to, is it a dog issue? Is it a person issue like we just talked about? Like, who the fuck, you know what I mean? In many of these situations, it's a combination of the two. Yeah. You've got 2 incompatible dogs with each other that, sure, under the right circumstances, with the right owners and the right house, if you do all the things right, it could work out just fine. Then you have dogs that, like, but they're owned by people that just, like, not for anything against them, absolutely no knock on those people, but they aren't cut up for the amount of work that it's going to take, right? Or the amount of discipline it's going to take mentally, physically, emotionally. You know what I mean? Like all of those types of things. You did learn how to break up the dog fights successfully, which is why I'm assuming, even though it sounds like you had a lot of fights after that, you didn't wind up in the hospital again, which is a good thing, but it's like, that obviously isn't solving the problem. It's like, okay, cool. So I'm not getting hurt. Right. But these dogs are still getting torn to fucking shreds when they fight with each other.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Obviously, you You tried to rehome one of the dogs. Obviously, as you know, when you have dogs that have any bites on people, which even though they didn't probably intentionally try to bite you, that's a bite on a person. Most rescues are not going to even touch a dog like that, let alone dogs that are fighting with other dogs. Right. You did wind up rehoming one of the dogs already, but it wound up incurring you even more stress and expense. And like, obviously, I don't know your financial situation, but like you mentioned in this, that 2 boarding trains were out of the budget, which I understand. It's fucking expensive. So it's not like you got the money to be throwing around on like multiple $1,000 vet bills all the time, or buying literally everything for a dog for another person. And I think you mentioned in this, buying nicer versions of all of these things for another person. Right? Like, you got to call, you got to bring the dog back into your house. Now you have separate everything. You're living this total crate and rotate situation. You're swapping out everything every time you take one of the dogs out and put one of the other dogs away. Right. And again, not knowing anything about your home situation, but like, I'm assuming you don't have a freaking 7,000 square foot house where you could have like 2 separate wings for each of the dogs to live in and all this kind of stuff. Right. Like, that's another thing you have working against you. Then you mentioned in this, the longer this happens, the more it's changing your personality, right? There is something that living on constant edge with dogs in a home for prolonged periods of time, like, does to the psyche of a person, right? And you've been at this for a long time now, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that this situation has absolutely consumed your life.
Oh, yeah.
Consumed it from the stress of, are these dogs going to kill each other? Is one of these dogs going to kill me? Whether accidentally or not? You know, am I going to get a call from this person that I just rehomed this dog to, that like something happened, or I need to pay more money, or they can't keep the dog? You know what I mean? Like, it's about as bad of a situation as you could be in. I mean, frankly, you know, aside from, you know, owning a dog that really is trying to kill you at all times in the house. But I would argue, man, this might be just as bad. This might be just as bad. So, Heather, I want to... Oh, I said your name. I'm sorry. I won't say your last name. Heather, I want to give you my advice with the caveat that I don't know your dog. I've never worked with you before. I don't know your skill set. I don't know how bad the dogs really are. I don't know if this is a situation of like the dogs are tearing each other up, but it's because of the size of them. It's because we don't know how to break up fights. How bad are the issues with leading to these problems happening? Like, there's so many details I would need to know. And if you really want to get into the weeds of this, we do virtual consults. And an hour-long virtual consult is what we would need, where we would really break down each of your fights, try to find patterns, see if there's anything I could look at and be like, well, these are glaring red flags that are at play that are causing these issues to happen, you know, and these are some adjustments you would need to make if you even wanted a shot at making this work. But like, if I were in your situation, if I were you, not me, because if I were me, I have different skills than you. I could work through things a little bit differently, right? But if I were you, you need to focus on yourself right now. You need to, this sounds so cruel, right? But you need to forget the dogs and you need to focus on yourself. Because here's the thing, you're not going to live forever. And the longer you spend trying to, like, you know, wasting away years and, you know, all of your financial resources, right? And all of your happiness. And if you're in like a relationship or have children, you know what I mean? Like, like it's going to destroy, this situation is going to destroy everything in your life. And I've seen it happen to so many people that have situations like this, and they decide, I'm going to do a crate and rotate situation with these dogs. And even if they're three or four, I think she said is the oldest one, even if they only live 5 more years, you're going to do crate and rotate for 5 years, right? You are going to lose 5 years of your life in constant stress and agony. It will change who you are. And until one of those dogs finally is gone, and I say finally, not like we want one of them to be gone, but like once the burden is finally lifted from you of all of the stress and the management and the money and everything, until it's lifted from you, you're not going to realize how incredible of a life you could have owning dogs.
Yeah.
You know, like it.
I mean, this one for sure too. It's just
like man, like at what point is enough is what I say.
Yeah.
You know, like you were literally hospitalized for a week because of these fights. Like I understand you know how to break up a dog fight a little bit better now, but like, what if you can't one time? What if these dogs are like this is the really crazy situation of this stuff happens, guys. What if these dogs get in a fight and you try to break it up, and because they're so big, they knock you over, and then you get right in the middle of it, and one of these dogs absolutely like ruins your life or literally kills you. Mm-hmm. Like, these things happen. And we have to look at those situations and be like, at what point is enough? At what point is my safety and happiness and well-being more important than these dogs?
That's a tough
I mean, that is just it. I think sometimes, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this, right? I think a lot of times people have family members and other, people that are outside of your circle that are looking in on it and thinking the same thing. And whether they've said it or whether they're scared to say it, at some point you've got to pick yourself. And I think sometimes it coming from somebody who works with this stuff professionally and understands the risks involved in it and has seen the best case and the worst case scenario, you've just gotta be able to focus on yourself. I have so many clients that have owned really like aggressive dogs, and they've just managed these dogs through their whole life, right? Mm-hmm. And the amount of work and stress that it puts on them is astronomical. And then the dog passes away, and it's sad, right? Obviously, it's like, oh my God, like my dog's gone, right? They're not there anymore. But then they get another dog, right? And they never forget about their old dog, but they start realizing very, very quickly that how incredible their life could have been with a dog because of how much easier some dogs are out there, how much more suitable some dogs are out there for your life. Mm-hmm. And you don't realize it until it happens.
Yeah.
Right. And then you realize it. And so many of those people, I don't want to say they have regrets necessarily, but they start questioning, why did I put myself through all of that?
Yeah.
Why did I put myself through all of that?
Yeah. You don't see that till you're looking in retrospect,
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Like, I don't even like to, I mentioned like the phone consult, like there are or the virtual consult, like there are some situations like this where I am not a believer that I don't like telling people, like, you should put your dog down until I meet the dog or work with the dog or this or that. I like weighing out options. But really, if I had to lay your options out there, your options are either alleviate this stress now. Mm-hmm. You already tried rehoming the dog. It didn't work.
Yep.
Sure, maybe there's a great owner out there. And if you find one, I'm happy for you. But for as long as it takes for you to find an owner, you're putting yourself through stress the entire time. Yeah. There's no guarantee you don't run back into this situation again, right? Mm-hmm. Putting the dog down is the quickest and easiest and probably the most honorable thing you could do in this situation, in my opinion, right? If you've got somebody you could rehome the dog to, that you trust and know, and you're not going to get yourself in another pickle where it's like you're paying for everything. It's like, hey, do you want this dog or do you not want this? Do you care about this dog or do you not care about this dog? Mm-hmm. Right? And then training is the absolute last thing I would look at in this situation. This is where getting to the nuance, the risk is too high, right? The risk of something happening to either you or to one of the, look at the other dogs.
Yeah.
These dogs are literally killing each other.
Yeah.
Right? The risk to the other dogs is so high. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no circumstance where that goes away.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion. I'm happy to talk more with you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk more with you. But man, I think you got to really, really look at the circumstance at hand and just truly ask yourself the question of, when is enough enough? And really, honestly, even sometimes in these situations, what's helpful is getting somebody that knows you. And because a lot of people like to spew unwanted advice.
True.
Find somebody you really, really trust that knows you and knows your situation, and just ask them honestly, how is this how is this changing me? Because a lot of people, like we all know somebody that's going through something, right? And you could have your opinions on what they should do or this or that. But we all can be aware of how that thing that they're going through is changing them. More so than that person knows themselves, right? And sometimes if you're open to the feedback, somebody telling you, I don't know everything going on in your house, but this is what it's turning you into. This is what I've noticed transform for you. Sometimes that helps really open your eyes a little bit of how bad things are. Because we get ourselves into this headspace sometimes where it's like, this becomes normal. Like this life you're living with these dogs becomes a normal thing to you. It's like, this is just life.
Yeah.
But that's not a normal life.
No. It's just kind of existing.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many, there's so many red flags and variables that you can't overlook when you're trying to rehome or training or any of that. Like you said, look at what's happened so far.
Yeah.
You know, like some serious things that a lot of people will never have to deal with. And your situation is kind of, it's pretty intense, you know? It's not a normal thing. I think that's the one thing you have to kind of, when you take to step back and look, and it's like, the other people in my life have never had to deal with this kind of thing. I don't know. That's tough. It's a tough situation.
So that's my take. Take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, I am just some guy on the internet.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, in the end of the day, I am some guy on TikTok that you're messaging, right? But that is my take on your situation based on your message.
Yep. That's all we could do.
That's all we could do. We're going to end that on that because I got to go to the shop.
Okay.
All right, guys. It's been real. Happy 2025.
Hello.
Happy New Year. Crush your goals and dreams. And we'll catch you next time.
See ya.